Hello, and welcome to another Veterans Still Serving Show. I'm Al Gilley, Major General retired Army.
Hi, I'm David Landfair. I'm a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel.
And we're your co-hosts for Veterans Still Serving, a show that features veterans who, after having left the military, have made that deliberate choice of continuing to serve in their community. And they do it in so many different ways. They do it by owning a business or starting a business that the community needs. They do it by entering a profession that's greatly needed in the community. Many of them in law enforcement, in the medical field. They just want to contribute. And then others join all these nonprofit organizations, the charitable organizations, and there are so many. But the bottom line is that our veterans are out there serving, they are still serving.
We have a really interesting show coming up. A great guest has a really interesting life. But first, sir, what you been up to since last show?
Well, since the last show, the day before Veterans Day, I went over to Lipscomb Elementary School, and it was fantastic. I mean, this is something that Ms. Sanders, the principal out there, does every year. And what happens is we had about 60 or 70 veterans that come in, and I sort of found who was a master sergeant out there, and I said, "This is the master sergeant." We formed them up on the side of the flagpole, and before the students we went into the building, we just talked military stuff. But then the good thing is what happened when they went inside. They went inside, and the wall was just filled with kids, all the way down this long wall with flags and banners and saying, "USA, we love you," and many of these gentlemen were from Vietnam era, and they had never had a parade like that. I mean, today when our guys come back, they in fact get that. And so we went in, I left that and went to a poetry reading in one of the 5th grade classes. Fantastic. Ms. Hamill's class had broken it down into all the 5 branches, and the kids read their poems that they'd written. It was a fantastic day. I enjoyed it. And what about you?
You sound like you were fired up.
I'm still fired up.
You're fired up. And I appreciate all the stuff you do for education.
I love it.
That's outstanding. Our JRTC students threw a drill meet for 18 different schools, over 600 cadets from 4 different states. It provided an opportunity, a leadership laboratory for 600 cadets who otherwise wouldn't have one. And it went off fantastic. We even made a little money for the program, and that's always good too, with a gigantic bake sale. It was outstanding. I was so proud of them. They did a great job.
That's fantastic. And who won? Who was the winner of the eventual? I know. Let the world know.
It was our rival. Now, we didn't compete in our own drill meet because
you're not allowed to.
Now, well, I think it'd be uncool.
Okay.
But Navarre won.
Okay.
And they have a great program out there at Navarre.
Fantastic. And I'm really looking forward to this guest. He was with me in Rotary. He was the president of Pensacola North prior to my becoming president, and so you're going to enjoy him. The audience is going to enjoy him. You saw his bio. He's done so many things.
We don't have enough time to talk about all the things he's done in his lifetime, so we'll have to cull out a couple of things to talk about. In fact, I should probably shut up so we'll have enough time to do it, and maybe we should go to commercial and talk about our sponsor.
I agree.
Trident Home Loans.
Hey, give the telephone number for him.
1-877-TRIDENT.
Hooah.
Less stress, more options. That's what you'll get with Trident Home Loans. We'll make it simple to understand the lending process, and we'll work with you to make sure you're in control every step of the way. Trident Home Loans is veteran-owned and operated. We're dedicated to making sure our servicemen and women, as well as civilians, know their options to get the best possible loans. Call or click today to learn more about how Trident Home Loans can help you buy or refinance your new home with confidence.
The United States Air Force has a proud history of leading our nation in embracing diversity. We've been reaching new heights for years by understanding it's our individual experiences which make us strong. You can share in this success by seeking opportunities to learn and grow as a member of a diverse team. We are the world's greatest Air Force, not because of what we do, but who we are. This message is brought to you by the U.S. Air Force.
We are Chain Reaction. We help teens develop community projects and in the process, help them turn elements of character into personal strength. Find out what you're made of. Chain Reaction. Impact beyond yourself.
And we're back. This is Veterans Still Serving. And we have an outstanding show for you today. David's going to tell us about it because he's, as you can see, he's laughing. He's so excited about it because this is.
We're going to talk airplanes.
I know you're going to talk airplanes. A lot of them.
And we have an aviator. In fact, he's got a book called Mr. MiG. So you kind of have an idea. He has a couple of books. Paul Entrekin has had quite the aviation life. And actually a lot more because it's community service stuff as well. It's just outstanding. I need to shut up so that we can bring him on the show.
He's a retired major.
He is. United States Marine Corps, retired major, flew with Delta Airlines. He's flown so many aircraft I can't count, probably about 40 different aircraft. We need to ask him questions.
Why don't we just go ahead and bring him on?
Okay.
Okay, so at this time, we're going to welcome to Veterans Still Serving, Major Retired, Paul Entrekin. Paul, welcome aboard.
How are you, sir?
All right.
Pleasure to be here.
Welcome,
Good.
Paul.
Thank you.
And David has been dying to ask the first question. So David, you started out.
I have. One of the first things I noticed in his bio with the 40 different aircraft that he's flown, but there's fixed wing fighters, there's heavies, turboprop, and helicopters. So my first question is, how did you keep anything straight when you got in the cockpit?
Like we discussed earlier, aviation instrumentation is pretty much the same regardless of the type of aircraft. So it's not that difficult, and anybody that tells you otherwise is pulling your leg.
Okay, wait a minute. There's a difference between Soviet-made instruments and Western world. Could you explain that to the audience and tell me how you kept that straight?
Well, he's talking about with your MiG.
Yes.
But first, let's tell the audience. He's the first civilian to own a MiG-15.
First one to fly one.
Fly and own it.
Yeah.
And so therefore, that's what he's talking about when you're talking about the instrumental panel, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so go ahead and answer it.
For the sake of time, the short story is that the airplane was manufactured in the Soviet Union. It was assembled at the Shenyang plant in China. So all the instrumentation had both Russian Cyrillic characters and Chinese characters on it when we got that airplane.
And you can read both Cyrillic and Chinese.
I couldn't read either one of them, but I could tell where the needle was in the green and where it was in the red, and green is good, red was bad. We eventually subtitled everything in English.
Now let's jump backwards and go back to when you first entered the military. What made you join and why did you choose the Marines?
I had a father who was in the Army Air Corps, an uncle who was in the United States Army, another uncle that was in the United States Navy, and my grandfather was a Navy Cross recipient in the Marine Corps. And when I was just a little tyke, I used to say, "Grandpa, I'm going to grow up and be a Marine like you." And since we didn't have another Marine in the family until I came along, that was the service that I chose.
Very good.
Okay, I have another question. Back when I was a teenager, in 1976, I was a military dependent living in Taiwan, and even I heard about Victor Belenko defecting from the Soviet Union over to Japan in a MiG-25, and you met him.
Yes.
You tell us a little about him in the MiG-25? I bet you that was an intelligence bonanza.
It was. Back in the day when Victor defected in that aircraft, it was a wealth of intelligence for our air power. They took it apart. They checked everything out as best they could with the limited time they had, but they eventually had to give that airplane back to the Soviets. But they were able to glean a lot of intelligence in the brief time that they had it.
Yeah, you've flown MiGs and you've flown our aircraft. Which are better?
That's a really good question, and it's one of those beauties in the eye of the beholder questions. The question that I'm most often asked about the similarities is between the F-86 and the MiG-15.
Okay.
And I think what it all came down to, they each had their advantages, and the difference maker was the brains in the cockpit. If the smartest of the two pilots is the one that was going to win, regardless of which aircraft he was in.
You know, and when I was intelligence officer, I used to tell our pilots that it's your training that makes the difference. Go out and do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're talking about MiGs. You acquired a MiG. Tell us about how did that happen, and also talk about the two books that I see right here in front of you, because they relate to the MiG and some other stories. So
I'll be happy to. I started out when I left the Marine Corps in the air show business flying a Pitts S-2B, which is a little aerobatic biplane, and essentially at that time they were sort of a dime a dozen in the air show business, and unless you were a world aerobatic champion or something that separated you from the other pilots, you needed some kind of credential to get your name out there as an air show pilot. And to make a very long story short, through some circumstances that I couldn't have planned had I tried, I stumbled across a gentleman out in California that had imported the first 5 MiGs from China. And when I talked to him, he told me about that, and I flew out to California and we did a deal, and next thing we knew, we were talking to the FAA, got the airplane certificated, and I was flying air shows within a few months.
And talk about your 2 books.
What
motivates you to write the books? I mean,
as I shared earlier, when I was flying with Delta, it was routine for me to fly a trip, and the cockpit crew, in particular, like the 727, where you've got 3 people up there, somebody would typically recognize my name and they'd say, "Aren't you the MiG guy?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I'm the MiG guy." They'd say, "Well, tell us some stories," kind of similar to the questions that you're asking now. And so for the rest of the trip, 2 or 3 days, I'd tell flying stories. And almost invariably at the end of the trip, somebody, if not both guys, would say, "You ought to write a book. You got some really good stories." And it occurred to me that my children in particular were not aware of many of the stories that I was telling these guys, and I thought I really should put it down in writing so that my children will have a record of what their dad did. It evolved into 2 books because there was so much aviation technical information in the in part of the first book that I had to cull it out and make it 2 different books.
I wanted to jump in because if you haven't read this book, it's really, it hits you right here. It's called Mighty Hands, and there's a reason for that. Now, at one point in the book, he's flying upside down at about, 400 miles an hour, about 300 feet off the ground, and it was a MiG, and the panel with all his instruments was falling into his lap. Tell us what happened and how you got out of that one.
The way I got out of that was nothing less than divine intervention. I managed to stop the panel from falling onto my feet with my left hand. I continued the roll in the aircraft and managed to pull out just before hitting the trees. But it was a really, really close call.
Okay, those of you that don't fly, when you have your hand on the stick, if you had one hand going out that way, what happened with the other hand?
Well, you're absolutely right. And when you're inverted, when you pull back on the stick, the nose goes down toward the ground. And that's a really, really bad situation. That makes a bad situation much worse. So that is what happened. I was able to continue the pull. I put just a shade over 10 G's on the airplane.
Holy
The
cow.
G meter maxed out at 10, and it was pegged. So I know I pulled at least 10, probably a few more than that.
Did it break anything?
Didn't break a thing.
Wow.
now you airplane guys and jet guys kind of leave me behind.
I'm sorry.
I don't know, that's all right. I don't know about all that stuff. But what I do want to talk about is some of your contributions to the community. We've covered the military part, but I definitely want to cover what this show is all about, veterans still serving. And you are still serving. Talk about some of the things, talk about Rotary and Boy Scouts, because I know you are big in both of those, and there's a whole bunch of other things, but I want you to talk about those two.
He was an Eagle Scout.
I know.
He started little.
That's right. I'll start with scouting then, since that's a good segue. I've always loved scouting. I felt very privileged to be an Eagle Scout, and I was always looking for an opportunity as an adult to give back to some way to scouting. And the Gulf Coast Council here is fantastic. They're one of the best councils in the country, and I was able to serve as a scoutmaster. I served as the district committee chairman. I still serve on the council executive board, and it is truly a labor of love. If there's anyone out there that's interested in scouting, I urge you to contact the local council office. They can use you, and you will not regret it. It's some of the best time you'll ever spend.
And Rotary.
Rotary, I was introduced to Rotary by my advertising agent, Frank Craddock. Took me to Rotary one day, and I met some of the most interesting characters I had ever seen. And then I was hooked just because of the friendships. Some business people joined for networking. Very many people joined because of the service-oriented nature of Rotary, especially Rotary International. And those things all just fell into place for me, and I've been a Rotarian ever since for 26 years.
So what
now.
are some of the projects that you all have done in your Rotary Club? Can you think of some?
When I was the president, we built a Habitat for Humanity house. If you're familiar with the Chimney Park on Scenic Highway, went down there when that was all overgrown with weeds and cleaned that up. We've worked on playgrounds and just done a tremendous number of things in the community that are sweat equity, roll up your sleeves kind of projects, not to mention the charitable contributions that we make.
And I'm familiar with all those that Paul is talking about because I was also a president of the same club that he belonged to in Rotary.
That's
and
right.
One of the things we were going to do is get rid of polio in the world. Where do we stand on that now?
Well, as we like to say in Rotary, we're this close. We're this close. I think there are only 2 countries in the world right now that still have some cases of polio, and there are a handful. So we're almost there.
I have so many questions. Well, first though, while we're on this theme of community service, you were also on the board of the Veterans Memorial Park, and I really love the things that they're doing there with the speaker series. And tell us a little bit about that.
I was very, very privileged to be asked to serve on the Veterans Memorial Park Board, and still do. As a matter of fact, we're having our Veterans Day program tomorrow down at the park. The park is, we call it the jewel on the bay. It's absolutely beautiful. It's a very serene place. It's a wonderful place to go and just walk around and look at the different memorials and monuments that are there. We intend to keep it as a place of reverence, but we do have fun, festive events there as well, like the Veterans Day program tomorrow. And it's one of the nicest parks that the city of Pensacola owns, and it is a city park.
Now we have a tradition here that we call the alibi, and that's where we give you an opportunity to look in that camera and say to the audience anything that you want to say, things that we haven't asked because we dictated the questions. You had nothing to do with that, but now it's your chance to say anything you want to the audience.
Okay, this will possibly come across as a little bit patronizing, but I mean it from the heart. I think General Gilley and I both come from a perspective of servant leadership and how important that is. And by virtue of the servant leadership that these gentlemen are showing, the community has the benefit of being exposed to local veterans that are still serving in their community. And hopefully we serve as an encouragement to other veterans to serve also. And by creating a forum for that, you do a tremendous service for our community, and I thank you for that.
We appreciate you saying that, we really do. And now we have one other tradition, and that's David's book.
I wrote a book called Picking the Right College. It's for youngsters to help them get to the right school so that they can graduate.
And also how to pay for it, right?
But to find somebody to pay for it. If you could find somebody that could use this, I'd really appreciate it.
I'm sure I can.
And he autographed it.
Great. And I have one for you gentlemen. Since aviation is your thing, and Al, I don't think you have a copy of this one.
No.
I'm very glad to give both of you a copy of that.
I appreciate that very much. This is the one I got.
I'm taking this to the classroom.
Great.
I'm taking this home.
Very good.
And read it.
It's time for a commercial. Let's hear from our sponsor, Trident Home Loans, 1-877-TRIDENT.
Less stress, more options. That's what you'll get with Trident Home Loans. We'll make it simple to understand the lending process, and we'll work with you to make sure you're in control every step of the way. Trident Home Loans is veteran-owned and operated. We're dedicated to making sure our servicemen and women, as well as civilians, know their options to get the best possible loans. Call or click today to learn more about how Trident Home Loans can help you buy or refinance your new home with confidence.
The United States Air Force has a proud history of leading our nation in embracing diversity. We've been reaching new heights for years by understanding it's our individual experiences which make us strong. You can share in this success by seeking opportunities to learn and grow as a member of a diverse team. We are the world's greatest Air Force, not because of what we do, but who we are. This message is brought to you by the U.S. Air Force.
We are Chain Reaction. We help teens develop community projects and in the process, help them turn elements of character into personal strength. Find out what you're made of. Chain Reaction. Impact beyond yourself.
And we're back. I'm Al Gilley, Major General retired Army.
And I'm David Landfair. I'm a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel.
And we've been talking to a Major retired from the Marines, Paul Entrekin, and we had, audience, you can testify to this already. He was a great guest. But usually I wait till my guests leave before we kind of not embarrass him by saying some of the things that he really did that, I mean, this guy had done so much. But I want to just list, as I always do, some of the things. These are some of his recognitions. He was multiple U.S. and world airspeed records, the National Aviation and Space Exploration Wall of Honor. He's an honorary Kentucky colonel, an honorary lieutenant colonel aide-de-camp for the Alabama State Militia. He was the honorary lieutenant governor for the state of Alabama. He was an honorary Alabama state trooper, honorary admiral for the city of Decatur, Alabama. He was a Paul Harris Fellow, numerous Boy Scout awards, and he was a Knight of Rose Cross Royal Order of Scotland. I mean, there's so much.
And we didn't even talk about him playing football at Auburn. We didn't talk about the movies he was in. We didn't scratch the surface.
And the thing about it, he played with the Amazons, and that's a team that'll go down in history. I think what that year that was like in 1972, and they were gonna be underdogs going in, but they had a tremendous season, and they end up beating Alabama, the famous Bear Bryant. And that was something that everybody remembered. Yeah. I mean, so it was. We could talk about all that stuff ever.
But we got to start wrapping things up.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So what I want to know is remind the audience how to get our show.
Okay. And I get this question a lot. So how do we find the show? Well, there's a couple of ways. One is go to the Blab TV website, and you can see this background on the website, and you can click on that, and then all the episodes are there. So you can see it that way, or just record it on your DVR, look up Veterans Still Serving, and hit record, and it'll come up, because we're at different times all over the schedule.
And I'm going to end with a little, before we do our salute to the veterans, a little short, not even a joke, but a story. When I was coming down the hallway, we talked about me being at Lipscomb Elementary. The little second graders who had performed for us was walking down the hall, and the whole program was over. And one little girl said, all of them had been saying, "Thank you for service." One little second grader said, "Thank you for our homework." And the teacher said, No, not the homework. I just had you, that was part of your homework to say thank you for your service, you know, but that was funny. But again, okay.
I know we got to go, but one thing I wanted to say, I really like this guest, is because he's kind of like you. He's a genuine good guy.
No, thank you for saying that.
Fun to talk to. In fact, he'd be a great guy to have over at a cocktail party.
I agree.
Because we would just talk all night, and all of a sudden be like, man, it's midnight, we got to go home.
I know. Now, this last part of our show is where we salute you veterans out there who are, in fact, making contributions to our community. This show is Veterans Still Serving, and so many of you are out there still serving. Now, the last show, when we did our salute, I came down a little slow, and that was because my rotary cuff was really paining me. But when I looked at it, I felt kind of embarrassed by it, because I never want to give a salute that's not a sharp salute. So I'm going to put still hurting, but I'm going to give a good salute. So, to all you veterans out there, David and I would like to say to you, we salute you.
outstanding, and I know that was painful.
It was.
You're a good guy. You're a good guy.
But again, we'll be here next week for the next show. Will you be here with us?
Please tune in. I'll be here.
I definitely will be here, and I know you'll be here with us because you kind of like us, right? Thank you.
See you next time.
See ya.
Less stress, more options. That's what you'll get with Trident Home Loans. We'll make it simple to understand the lending process, and we'll work with you to make sure you're in control every step of the way. Trident Home Loans is veteran-owned and operated. We're dedicated to making sure our servicemen and women, as well as civilians, know their options to get the best possible loans. Call or click today to learn more about how Trident Home Loans can help you buy or refinance your new home with confidence.
The United States Air Force has a proud history of leading our nation in embracing diversity. We've been reaching new heights for years by understanding it's our individual experiences which make us strong. You can share in this success by seeking opportunities to learn and grow as a member of a diverse team. We are the world's greatest Air Force, not because of what we do, but who we are. This message is brought to you by the U.S. Air Force.